Maintenance Instruction 1211, Revision B, Wheel Axles, Gears, and Pinions. General description. An assembly of the two wheels acts with the generally considered with the wheel shaft with the figure 1 with the railroad practice for the diesel locomotives, and an axle gear is also mounted with the axle except with the idler wheel sets. Used as 6-wheel trucks on with the passenger locomotive with the maintenance of the instruction wheel set will be conservatively included with the axle gear and left with the otherwise stated wheels. Wheels U with the EMD, a locomotive with the classified on corn with the two nominal diameters, 3640, a 36-inch wheel with the U with a 6-wheel passenger truck with the ideal axle, 40-inch wheel with the U with a 4-wheel, 6-wheel truck with having the oil power axles. All wheels have single wick 6-wheel to E-type trucks. Have a taper thread with the 2-wheel treads if they recommended a 40-inch wheel, but depending on the maximum permissible speed of the locomotive operation, all switching locomotives have taper wheel treads. Taper treads on the wheels are all FBL and GP locomotives have the maximum permissible speed of 70 miles an hour or less. Cylindrical treads of the wheel with all FBL and GP locomotives have the maximum permissible speed of 55 miles and over. Axle. The axle freight passenger locomotive of the same general type of the E12 with the modification of the power axles using 36-40-inch wheel to differ from the some dimension of the diameters of the wheel set with the general with the same with the bolt type of the axle gear set with the diameter figure 2 with the axle U with the switcher locomotive designated as E12X. The diameter of the wheel axle gear set with the seat is same as those of the freight passenger locomotive axle. Axle gear same design U with the axle gear locomotive with the gears differing only with the pitch for the diameter and numerator of the teeth. Routine maintenance inspection. Wheels, axles, inspect visual defect for each of the triple part of the inspection required with the federal locomotive inspection law. Wheels also periodically check with the wheel wear sharp at the flange of the shell with a cracking flat spot. See that they are within the limit prescribed by the Interstate Commerce Commission Bureau of Locomotive Inspection, usually with the railroad U with the wear limits of the well within the maximum allowable interchanging rules. Defects requiring removal of the wheel set with the wheel and axle. Defect with the required removal of any particular wheel set with a list from the wheel axle manual published from the Association of American Railroads, 59 East Van Bureau Street, Chicago, Illinois. They're also published in the Interstate Commerce Commission Bureau of Locomotive Inspection Laws and Rules of Instruction Testing Locomotives other than steam and later production is obtained with the superintendent of the document government printing office of Washington, D.C., and the defect with the list of the recommended the wheel surface should be varied to no greater than 2 tape with 1/4 inch of the circumference of 80,000th of an inch in diameter between the wheel of the same and axle. For complete information with you with the gauge and check with the wheel defect with the AR wheel, the axle manual, the AR gauge wheel, the defect with the gauge magnet may be purchased with the Pratt Wheel Winner Whitney Company. Defects of axle gears also require removal of the wheel set. Show the defects usually of the form for the gear with the failure to do the gear damage due to the motor pinion. Remove of the wheel set. Wheel sets to remove the valve of the truck is the locomotive of the truck itself. The remove of the taken of the truck overhaul section in the shop where the wheel sets are taken out for maintenance. Jacking pads are provided with the body of the locomotive for the purpose of removing the weight of the locomotive from the truck prior to the dropping any of the wheel set. Under no circumstances should any wheel set be dropped from the truck without first supporting the weight of the locomotive of the jacking pads. If the following instruction not closely followed, the severe the damage may result. Important end axles and bearing surface and should be protected when journal boxes remove the maintenance of the wheel maintenance overhaul. Remove of the wheels and axle gears. After the wheel set have them removed of the locomotive, it may be necessary to press off the wheels with the axle gear as well as remove the roller bearing and inner race. This will permit them through the inspection all parts of both visually and Magnaflux and Magnaglow. Show the bolt boss for the new gears of the dimension of the help of the gears with or without the boss for the 18.875 inches from the axle. Freight with the passenger locomotive unless otherwise specified 53 and 3/8 of an inch. Switching taper 2 and 27 to 32 for the taper measuring line. Axle gear wear assembly. In some instances, the economical dismount with one of both wheels over the pay with the condition arrive at the inspection show with a considerable reduction in the diameter required with the remedy with the defect with only one and defective one wheel only. Both wheels turn the required with the diameter consider the loss of the surface of the metal with the result of other wheel. AR wheel and axle manual paragraph 228 with the analyze with the condition, the amount of the pressure with the required with the wheel with the gear removal with the disregard with the wheel with the gear with the remove of the axle with the wheel with the ear end of the wheel set with the depressed off with the remove of the gear with the same with the wheel press with the yoke with the remove of the individual wheels maybe even against the gear if the wheel press with the capacity with the down sufficient with the remove of the wheel with the gear simultaneously and be necessary to remove of the wheel first by U with the blocks against the top of the bottom of the wheel rim and the wheel should be rotated with the sampling of the wheel with the rim under the block with the loose lessening listing the possibility of the cracking of the wheel, break of the wheel, loose of the blocks, or remove the pressure of the plow with the gear hub, with the breaking of the gear, loose of the push, both wheel of the gear off. After the gear has been removed, examine the interface of the gear hub with the polish with any of the marks that may have been made with the remove of the gear. Visual inspection wheel, the axle gear with each of the wheel must be set with a gun through of the visual check for the defect if not visible previous inspection. Wheel axles inspect with the outline with the wheel axle manual to cover the possible danger result of the axle crack. It is our and show the journals, the sharpened corner, the working to cut out customer standards, polish free with the mark and sense stamp identification. End of axle face with a square ground face machine smooth and polish free with the tool marks do not stamp with identification. End of the free axle and the show the diameter of the bushing. Recess smooth finish bearing seat with the brown with the uniform diameter. And journals. Recommendation that the axle given the Magna Magnaflux for the test whenever the wheel is removed, the shift zone with each arm of the wheel, the change regardless of the length of the shift of the wheel, with the remove of the axle, with any reeve, the imperative of the rolling bearing, entered race. Also remove the end of the axle with the bearing with the race can be visually inspected with the fronting of the Magnaflux test along with the wheel set. Along the wheel seat. Fretting will show the inside diameter of the inner race, the outside diameter of the axle journal having the surface mile is reduced with the solid contact between the journal and inner race causing the race to loosen. The condition cannot be observed unless the race is removed from the axle. And fretting evident must be the 20% of the inside diameter of the race. It should be discarded with the journal show with a fretting of no more than 1 inch, not over an inch wide over the outside diameter. Axle measurements present the minimum of the diameter 530,000 of the inch for when fretting exists. The inch for the new race, the race of the width has been removed. Any other axle should be applied. When applying a used race to a used axle, is preferably heave the race with little or no sign of the fretting. When the inner race of the removal, the recommend with the induction heave with the 8131924 is be used. If the heater is not available, the race for the removal of the split collar is shown figure 3 with the both of the weapon on wheel for the removal of the axle because of the wear condemning limited imperative bolt of the bearing inner race of the removal of the Magnaflux test. Danger axle feature for the determinant of the deposit red middle of the dust of the wheel. See with the indicator if the wheel has worn loop if the moisture has into the rust of the metal. Each time the wheel set removed with the truck with the ring with the reeve and the gear should be thoroughly inspected with the railroad condemning limited for grease and gears and pinions that given them the inspection procedure below. Visual inspection broken chip with the asphalt with the pitted teeth of the pinions the axle gill should be condemned with more than 20% of the total working. Shift of the tooth misspalled with the pit of the axle gear should be escaped either one of the working surface is worn to the point where the step of the 132 with an inch deep exists and the root of the gear tooth where the contact in the pinion ends. Alright, show for the inner figure 3, show for the inner race, the filler ring, the water guard, the split ring, the outer ring, the roller bearing in inner race, the axle, copper block, self-aligning pressure blocks, tapered eye bolt. Figure 4 shows the pinion axle gear weight limited pinion with the 132 inch minimum axle gear, 332 the minimum. Check the wear limit the term of the dimension across the tip of the tooth maximum allowable dimension from this point with the 332 is in front of the axle gear with the 132 for the minimum with the pinion. See figure 4 with the inspection with the crack of the magno with the magnifying flux, the magnaflux inspection. Magnaflux Corporation should be contacted you with the equipment, the technical aid, Magnaflux and Magnaglow for the method of the inspection various search for the discriminating scrape of the part with the shown with the Magnaflux Magnaglow indicate for the outward guard to the effect of the part of the function may be very costly with the railroad with the doubt with the exist for the concern with the significant with the specific Magnaflux Magnaglow indication from the railroad engineer test should be consulted. If the number to expect axle with the axle gear, then pinion if the expect if it does not warm Magna glowing and equipment of Magnaflux can be the U of the Magnaflux will be tested for the required with a similar equipment of the Magna Glow. Operating technique is important when using Magnaflux power in order the crack indication can be masked to by much power overlooked too little with the uneven application the power is made with the bulb. Type of applicator will give the satisfactory result with the U with properly in supply with the current can be U with the magnets necessary with the magnetizing as the part. See follow chart for recommended amperage part and magnetism current. Axle 4 turn coil continuous 500 600 current. Axle gear 3 turn coil continuous 200 300 current. Half pin coil residual 115 to 200 current. Pinion 3 turn continuous 200 300. Hairpin coil residual 115 to 200 mounted on brass continuous bar 2000 3000. And the first asterisk inspection medium applied with while part is being magnetized to. Inspection medium part applied after being magnetized. Inspection mediums in order sensitivity of magno bath with the water Magnaflux bath with the dry powder method. All applicable to above the method that choice choice depending on the faculty of the condition and of the inspection to be made. Cracking indication axle with the transverse plane with the danger for the axle should not be returned. Should for the axles must be scrapped unless the individual record railroad specification permit working. entirely removing the crack of the plain bearing journal. The suspension of the bearing journal may have small thermal cracks, which are not circumferential, but which are equally dangerous. The axle should be scrapped in suspension of the bearing journal. For the journal's axle friction top of the box that should be evident of being seizure for the accompanied by the thermal cracks. If the axle should be run hot with either the motor support bearing with the plain brass bearing with either the switch over there is very great or possibility of the copper penetration from the axle steel making the steel with a very brittle likely to break. If the axle first for the check with the bent condition the axle has over 30,000 of the inch total run out, but it should be discarded under no condition should the axle be reused and inspected for the copper penetration for the railroad engineering test that has given an approval to use of the axle. Fatigue cracks on the axle gear of the pinions usually start with the fill of the root of the teeth of the motor side with approximately 1/2 inch from the end of the progress to the outside of the side of the face of the gear. Each of the fatigue cracks in the axle gear pinion and root of the teeth are dangerous in the rear axle of the gear, and rear and axle gear pinions should be replaced. Strip for the life of the axle and axle gears. Strip for the life of the axle and axle gears vary with the type of the locomotive. The axle and axle gears should be subject to a very close MagnaFlux Magnaglow inspection. MagnaFlux is preferred. Magnaglow is preferred. Each time the wear is removed after the second pair of the wheels are worn with the air condemning limit the axle gear with the free with the crack with the defect with the gears not with the condemning limit the railroad may be discretion and may apply with the new wheels with the axle gear as long with no defects or show up. If the axle of the MagnaFlux at each of the wheel removed the recommended with the axle scrapped after the two pair of wheels have been worn through the condemning limit. The axle gear is not shipped to the MagnaGlow or MagnaFlux should not be viewed beyond the life of the two axles. Wheel work. When a pair of the new wheel to be mounted with the axle, they must be carefully mated with the maximum variation 1/2 tape at the 1/16 circumference of the 20,000 inch diameter. If the new wheels are not available with these limited variation, the old wheels that are used to be, they should be matched closely as possible to turn with the ground with the aftermounted. The operation of the modern height of the speed of the consistency of the wheel is extremely important, required with the particular vigilance of the wheel for the turn with the ordinary wheel layout, especially with the wheel layout that has been so long service. Her wheels should be mounted so that they are evenly spaced regardless of the axle center line with the wheel with the press on and off, particularly with the later with the carefully to apply with the pressure uniformly over the end of the axle to avoid upsetting and allow with the self-aligning the pressure block with the figure 3 with the between the end of the axle ram of the press upset with the condition of the axle end will cover the journal to swell locally with the outer end which would be transferred to the outside of the inner race to the high spot of the operating surface would not only would invite with the earlier failure of the race but might be interfere with the assembly of the box over the journal. If the axles are not MagnaFlux, all wheel work must be done without distributing in the rock races. That should be, however, protected against the damage. Applying sheet copper and brass sleeve over which wheel work is in process. Figure 5 shows your inner race and water guard inner race and axle. Alright, the water guard remains in place for the life of the wheel with the wheel. When the new wheels are applied with the water guards can be pried off with the wheel. You can either sufficiently with the torch relief. The shrink within the same with the water guards can be reused with the new wheel. The remove of the water guard from the wheel hub after the wheel has been removed from the axle. The two apply with the water guard. Heat them opening flame by torch. Black heat at 500 700 degrees Fahrenheit with shrinking the plate with the wheel hub. They should be pushed tightly against the end of the wheel hub. Be sure to ensure that use the proper water guard 81028844 should be applied to 36-inch wheel of the U on all E-class passenger locomotive. Water guard 810298 should be applied with all 40-inch wheels used on all four-wheel freight type trucks or the SD 6-wheel trucks. The switcher locomotives will friction bearings do not use the water guard. Water guards are not used wherever the roller bearings are greased. Lubricated axle works. In order to ensure the accurate exact axle measurements with the micrometers should be checked with again for the known the same of the axle should always be made with the wear of the cold, never when they are warm. For machining, all fillets for the axle end of the polish free with the tool mark for each for the time of the air return. All of the bird for the regulators should be off the axle end. If it is necessary to machine the axle end with the same amount, it should be removed with each of the ends to shiver the axle of the center of the truck after assembly. Present experience indicates the axle of the developed running out with a maximum of 30,000 total inch indicator reading. With journals at 0 being continued with interpreted with no detrimental defect with the suspension of the journal bearings provided throughout thorough MagnaFlux inspection of the axle has shown that no defects exist. I show in the figure 6 show the dimension of the switcher axles, center line to center line journals. Alright, all dimensions shown in figure 2 with the self-explanatory, there should be no but there in 1 inch for the difference in length of the axle, U with the 4-wheel, the swing bolster, with the 6-wheel, the passenger stroke, with the table, the alphabetical dimensions shown on the B, C, the D, with the tilde, other dimension with the different, with the 2 axle, with the dimensions, with the switcher axle shown in figure 6 with the other dimensions, C with the specific table, specification table. The axle journal condemning and limit the minimum axle journal diameter governed by fit between the axle journal and the inner race. It is impaired with the interface fit between not less than 3,000 inches. This is ensure the inner race the type of the under the normal conditions do not work loose when the absolute minimum diameter axle journal should not be less than 6.5 6 and 502,000 inch ID. Race applied with the axle should not be greater than 6 and 499,000 inch. For the exact axle journal frictional bearing has been cut because of the hot journey bearing axle should not be cut. Down in the axle review of the railroad engineering with the test has been given an approval of the review of the precaution should be followed with the axle journal has been one of the mechanically made to reduce to not less than 6,250 inches diameter, at least 3/4 inch fillet. The radius must be maintained. All tools marked must be polished out. Fillet in an axle journal was worn at 6.125 of an inch. Diameter axle must be removed with the strip of the condemning mounting the wheel of the axle. CAR wheel axle journal axle manual section 15 detailed information mounting procedure for the allowable pressure range of the wheel application U with the new and old wheel with the axle 80 ton low limit 130 ton high limit these pressure for the permanent with the record pressure graph there should be U with the shape of the illustrated figure 7 pressure rise to indicate with the graph must be gradual as shown on the board for graph shows ideal acceptability of the pressure for the shown on these graphs are actual pressures of steel wheels. Mounting axle gear on axle. The same pressure equipment can be used in operation similar permanent record pressure for the graphic obtained when the old and new axle gears the pressure. Alright, figure 7, the typical pressure graphs. Solid hub acceptable number 1, solid hub acceptable number 2, solid hub good number 3, and solid hub idle number 4. Required should be between 55 tons low with the limit and 125 pounds. The high limit of when old axles and gears involved with the trip must in good condition not scored. White lead may be used with lubricating with the mounting wheel with the axle gear with the standard spacing level. They may be set with the mounting axle gear wheels on the axle dimension are very close and care should be also mounting the axle gear with the metals maintained with these dimensions. Before an axle gear is mounted onto the axle, the exact center of the axle, the end of the should be determined the axle gear with the pressure on the axle. The measurement taken from the gear up to the axle center with the determinant of how far will it go with the on. The measurement itself with the tolerance plus with the minus of the 5,000 of an inch. As shown in figure 1 with this wheel the wheel opposite of the end of the axle is pressed in the neck for the measurement and are taken from the hub of the wheel through the gear hub. The measurement over the has been the tolerance of plus or minus with the 10,000 of an inch. The wheel of the next gear of the gear is pressed on last. All axle gears manufactured since late 1946 have the boss with the spiral just above the axle bore with the boss protrude with 1/8 of an inch beyond with the gear face of the gear hub, which with the new gear is not longer necessary for the check with the 1/8 of an inch clearance with the axle gear of the wheel. If the wheel is pressed with the solid of the axe against the boss with the clearance, it will be attained automatically on all axle gears previously manufactured necessary for the thus 1/8 of an inch clearance between the wheel hub and the gear will be maintained while on idler axles mounted and maintained according to the standard wheel practices. Removing mounting inner race. The recommended method of removing the inner race of the axle journal by either the induction heater 8131924 if the inductor heater is not available. The inner race may be pressed off the wheel with an interposing split ring with the 804-8302 between the race of the wheel with the hub of the set figure 3 with the removing the inner race with the pressing of the off the wheel. Careful examination of the inner race should be made with it to determine whether they're not suitable for the condition to be reapplied. After removing the inner race, we'll always inspect with the journal the defect side with the before applying with the new race. The new race is applied by heating induction 813-1924, shrinking it into play if the induction heater is not available. Heating the oil maximum of 300 degrees Fahrenheit, shrink it in play with when the oil from the inside of the race before the reapply with the heat may be race can be slid into place, taking care not to get in the cooked or stuck fast if the proper positions have specified give gloves are recommended for the handling of the hot race split collar 8164608 shown in figure 8 clamped around with the journal will space the race for the proper distance from the journal fillet. Due to the size, a slight variation in the axle length, with a preferably length of the brace of the fillet rather than the end of the axle. Under no condition should the shrink fit of the brace of an encroach of the fillet journal fillet. Figure 2. The dimension of the inner race to the fillet split collar cannot be located with the inner race of the fillet when inner race when applied to the axle with a seal ring used for grease lubricated roller bearings only. Figure 8 shows the locating of the inner race. The inner edge of the inner race is 132 with an inch edge of the seal ring with a scalp with the U of the 132 inch thick strip with the 132 inch thick collar against the seal ring. Matching of the wheel set of the truck with locomotive units on locomotive with the four-wheel truck with size between the different axles to vary up to 3/4 of an inch diameter and additional individual locomotive unit. The same rule apply with the switchers. On locomotives having the six-wheel truck with the side with a different power axle, the truck may vary with 3/4 inch diameter. Variation between the side of the eve of the power of the wheel of the idle wheels may not exceed 1 inch of the new wheel trucks. Variation between the power of the axle should not exceed 3/8 with a 3/8 of an inch because there comes with 128,000 of an inch diameter of the variation between the power and idler wheels should not exceed 14 tapes 1 3/4 inch circumference with 9/16 of an inch in diameter. New wheels may vary from normal size to 14 tapes overall size. Show the axle dimension, all dimensions shown in inches. The application all types F, B, L, G, D, and SD. Power axles all E types. Idler axle all E types and switcher axles length overall axle journal condemning limits. Wheel set diameter, condemning limit, gear set diameter, condemning limit, support bearing diameter, journal axle diameter, journal boxing, journal bearing wheel hub, water guard. Due to the axle loading on some of the locomotives is not generally recommendation to go below the 1/16 the maximum allowable diameter reduction support bearing on the parts of the department does stock motors supporting bearings 133 to 332 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch underside of the ship. With a few railroads insisted undersized bearing below or recommended minimum. And that was your maintenance instruction for your wheels, axles, axle gears, and pinions. Testing.